Hey everyone, it's Vanessa Callaghan, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the Calm, Empowered Parent podcast. Together, let's challenge the idea that parenting has to be perfect. We know that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to raising children, and while love is the key, it sure helps to have the right tools for the job. Raising resilient humans is intensely personal and even transformative work, and I'm here for it. Let's laugh, cry, heal, and learn together. Here we go. Welcome. I'm so excited to bring on one of my favorite people, Rachelle Archer. Welcome, Rachelle, to the podcast.
Hi, Vanessa. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and why Rachelle is one of my favorite people? Well, first of all, she takes a bold stand for us all to be able to really step into our authentic selves and discover our passion and be in touch with our creative selves as we, play all the roles we play in life. She's also a mother to a lovely teenager and has quite a story of parenting to share with us today. And we connected, though, because we're both coaches. And she has had the opportunity to help a lot of youth serving professionals in her career. Tell you more about that in a moment. But the reason that Rachelle stood out to me to bring onto my team, onto my staff to work with parents who were interested in continuing beyond a year of coaching and in our immersion program is because of how she shows up as a leader and helps others show up as leaders. And we started to realize that, second, third, and fourth year members in our program were really ready for something more than just tools and strategies. They're ready to step into a new identity as a leader in their family and in other spaces that they occupy. And I just love what Rachelle brings to the table. We do in-person and virtual retreats with our leadership and our third and fourth year legacy students. We even have some fifth years now who keep coming back for these in-person and or virtual events where we get to have a creative component curated by Rachelle that helps us to get kind of out of our heads and into, our kind of our wholeness and tap into what's really possible. And so we're here today to talk about our leadership pieces and perspective to help you step into your own leadership as parents, as caregivers, and have that not be in competition for time and attention and energy for being an effective parent. Sometimes we feel like we have to put parts of ourselves away to be able to be effective parents, and we're really wanting you to bring your whole self forward. So I can't think of a better person to have this conversation with than Rachelle.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Yeah, I'm really proud of the work that we've done together with the parents, and it's so exciting to see how many keep coming back. And clearly something is really working for them, and they're really grabbing on to something that's really supporting them. So I'm excited to share about that today.
And our program is full because half of our families are in the program for second, third, or fourth, or even fifth year. Yeah, and I think that is a testament to our work and also their deep level of commitment to really growing and learning about themselves alongside being an effective parent. And that it's been so moving. Even just recently had a mastermind where there were 2 times available to make it accessible to everybody. And we had 85% participation of families making time, like almost 2 hours on their Monday to come and be in community and support each other. And I know we're a lot of this is sparked by what Rachelle brings to our space. And so a little bit more about Rachelle. So she gets behind these mission-driven leaders so that she can help them impact lives, but sustainably, so they can put their own well-being first, live and lead with a full tank, and make sure that as they're creating these caring community cultures, she's there to help empower all stakeholders to flourish. And so she's worked with especially youth serving professionals that are in youth development, school leaders, et cetera, and has 25 plus years of experience at the intersection of the arts and education and healing, and primarily with historically marginalized communities, such as folks who are unhoused or systems affected youth and their families. She offers organization healing, centered leadership, and organizational development in her work going forward. And she's always there for making sure that restoration, inclusion, and liberation are at the heart of the conversation. And that's what she embodies and brings into the space today too. So excited for the conversation. And Rachelle, I know that one of the things we wanted to talk about today is how, even though raising kids can put a significant strain on our own well-being and even deeply challenge our sense of identity. I mean, I know folks can express like feeling lost after stepping away from their other things to care for a baby, an infant for, 6 months to 2 years or beyond, and trying to like sort out their identity. I know that you went through your own kind of dramatic transition into parenthood and in some expected ways, but also unexpected ways. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind giving us a sense of like what your journey was like as a solo mom with some, to be quite frank, some trauma right at the start.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the warm welcome and sharing a little bit about my background. So as you were saying, I've spent most of my career working with unhoused youth and families, and my husband was a school counselor at a school that we had founded for unhoused youth here in San Diego. And we had been married for 7 years. And when we'd had a lot of challenges and a lot of hemming and hawing. Are we going to stick together? Are we going to have a baby? Are we going to do all these things? And unfortunately, the ground kind of fell out from under the whole thing when I was about 5 months pregnant. And so here we were, colleagues working together towards a similar mission and really supporting, students with a lot of challenges. And here our personal lives were really falling apart. And so I think that it was during that time where I was faced with some really important decisions, because as you can imagine, here's a woman who's already giving so much to the community, and her husband decides to leave or end the marriage. And here I was about to have a baby by myself. And so many of my family members and my colleagues and my friends were so angry, and everybody felt so betrayed. And, there was just so much big emotion and fear and stuff that went into that period of time. And there was a moment where I could really feel like I could really turn to a really dark place. And there were some times when I was really concerned about my own mental health and if I was going to be able to make it. And I remember a moment where I could kind of feel my heart just hardening and turning, almost like, I'm an artist, so I always imagine things with images, this heart just turning black, and so much of the life force of who I am and who I've been in the world just being drained from me by all of this anger and resentment and fear and hurt. And I had this moment where it was like, I'm losing me in this process. And this is not who I want to be for my son who's coming into the world. This isn't who I want to be to my friends and family. And this is certainly not who I want to be to those that I lead and serve. And I really had to do some real serious looking at myself and how I was going to respond to this. And yes, there were all the reasons to be mad and hurt and angry and betrayed and all those things, but it was like, what am I going to do about all of it? How am I going to be moving forward? And so I really had to make some decisions about who I want to be. And I wanted to be this creative, caring, loving, forgiving, inspiring mom to this boy that was coming into the world and to the kids that I serve. And so, that really started me on a process of, daily practices, of getting therapy, of being in healing communities, and also really shifting a lot of my work towards supporting people in our field who go through stuff in the background that impacts the work they're doing. And I've gone through some challenging stuff with my, ex-husband, who moved away to another state for a couple of years. And I was alone with this kid who was in preschool and serving really challenging populations at the time. And I had to learn some discipline around choosing what's best for me. There was a moment where I could have gotten really caught up in like drinking too much at night or doing some things that were really unhealthy for me just to cope. And I really started to build some really different habits because I saw that not working out very well, obviously, and really developed a practice that I still have now of getting up early in the morning before all the world starts and meditating and writing and checking in with like, who do I really want to be? And I think that has helped me continue to show up and sort of shine the heart that I really have for others into my life, and also with my son, and continue to come back to my ex-husband and build a relationship that's really focused on what matters most for our son. and that
Yeah.
we really made a commitment to each other. Whatever happens, we're focusing on what's best for him. And there are going to be times we're going to be mad at each other. We're going to have difficult things to work through, but how do we focus his needs in that process? And looking, at where he is now as a 16-year-old who's got straight A's and playing baseball and excited about the life he wants to create for himself. I feel like it's a testament to the work that I've done and that we did to really center his needs throughout that process.
Wow, Rachelle, it's so inspiring. I mean, that it couldn't have been easy, to first of all, even like pick yourself up out of that darker place and then get to the place where you felt that you had options. Because I think a lot of times when people go dark or are edging there, and they're maybe, like you said, you were in this community of people who are very angry on your behalf. And help us understand a few things that you did to even like open up your awareness that you had a choice, that you could like choose differently. Because that I think is, one of the higher level leadership hacks that we talk about is, shifting out of a space where you don't feel empowered and you don't have agency. And it'd be very easy to sort of fall into a role that's disempowering, like maybe like purely a victim with no agency, right? For example, which we've all done. I've done it too. Help us understand like what got you to that place where you were able to be aware that you had the choice and to boldly choose what you did.
Yeah, I mean, I feel there's a couple of things that come to mind. I grew up as a missionary kid, and my dad's a preacher. And when I was a teenager and doing all my wild and crazy, sowing my wild oats out on these streets, my dad would say something to me every time I left the house, and that was, remember who you are. And I think as much as it would irritate me as a teenager who was ready to go do whatever I wanted to do, I think that instilled in me like this constant checking in with myself of like, who am I really? And who do I want to be? And and growing up in that way, I also grew up with a pretty intense sense of purpose in my life. And I was a therapist working with young people. I had done a lot of leadership work already when my divorce happened. And so I feel like I already had some skills and some self-awareness that was there. But I think it really was that moment of just feeling like, and I remember a moment that was particularly scary. I worked at a school that was next to a trolley stop. And I was walking across the trolley stop, and there was a moment where I was like, I could just stand here and wait until the trolley hits me and takes me out. And I remember stepping back from there and just being like, whoa, you need help.
Yeah, it was like an alert, like an alarm.
It was a
Finally, right? Of
big
like,
alarm.
okay,
It was like,
right.
you are not okay right now. And because of the situation I was in, there was a lot of secrecy about what was happening because we worked together and we weren't comfortable yet sharing with everybody what was happening. And so there was just this moment where it was like, I have to get help. I have to tell people what's going on with me. And so I reached out to people in my community that could support me. And I started to I got therapy. I just kind of did all these things that kind of, there were tools that were already in my pocket in a sense, but that really helped to be like, whoa, don't go down that path. That's not where you want to go. Just remembering who I am when I am in my sort of most essential self, and really trying to find my way back there.
And choosing yourself in that moment.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes that's discouraged or frowned upon, or even like understandably put to the side to sort of like manage like you said, like kind of the perception of others, or or just like you're still trying to figure it out. But I think when those alarm bells go off, to pay attention to them. And in a way, I'm imagining it woke you up to where you needed to go next with taking good care of you through this process of separation, and going down the solo journey and revealing that fact to your community and getting the help you needed.
Yeah, and I think there was something that also happened, and I'm imagining for especially the listeners who maybe are in a less traditional family setting, who are maybe, single parents or co-parenting or have, different kinds of arrangements. there's a moment where I had to kind of kick to the curb the expectation of what family was going to look like. And, there, because I grew up with such a heavy, like, religious upbringing, there was a lot of pressure around what it meant to be a wife and a mother and all this. And that whole thing fell apart when I got pregnant. And so it was like, there was this moment of sort of tearing that story from me that felt really painful. And then there was another place I got to where that was really liberating, where it was like, I get to create what works for me and my son and my ex-partner. And, we get to do this the way that works for us. We're not here to make anybody else happy. And I
Mhm.
think that created a real powerful shift for us as well, of just redefining what this whole thing looked like for us versus everybody else, and just letting it go, because there was no way we were going to make everybody else happy, you know,
Yeah.
happening.
Well, I can see now, like, and I've heard the story before, but hearing it again, Rachelle, why you take such a bold stand for parents to, and all leaders in all spaces, but since we're talking about parents and caregivers today, like the parents in our program, the parents who are listening, the caregivers who are listening, to find that core piece of themselves that they always are, like it's just like who they really are. I mean, like what your dad asked, and what you had to ask of yourself in that moment of like, who am I and what am I creating? And when we get down to those essential questions, I feel like it gives us opportunity for creativity and sort of opens doors instead of shutting them, or might shut some doors but open a lot more, saying like, okay, I we get to like be in this like discerning place of
Yeah.
I don't choose that, and I do choose this, and I'm going to get curious about this thing I never considered before. And one thing that I really love that you came across in your kind of discovery process are these practices.
Mhm.
So you mentioned it in your story, and I wonder if you wouldn't mind enlightening us a bit about like your, like, kind of like, what's your secret? What are these practices that have helped you continue to commit to this, not just kind of ticky tacky, I take care of myself level of the
Mhm.
doing, the actual like the being of like that check in with yourself, that
Mhm.
relationship you have with yourself. Like, tell us the practices, let us in on the secret of how you like nurture that relationship with yourself. We'd love to know.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think about there's some kind of Buddhist parable or something that says, like, if you don't have time to meditate, then you should meditate for 1 hour. And if you don't have time to meditate for an hour, you should meditate for two. And I think about that in terms of like, the obstacle is the way. It's like, if you don't have time or you feel overwhelmed, then that's where you really need to look. And so for me, it was like, I have to start with filling my own tank and taking care of myself, or else all the rest of this is crap, right? Like, it's like half-assed, and it's not where I really want to be. And so I had to get really disciplined about really checking in literally the moment I wake up in the morning, being like, okay, I'm going to take some breaths. I'm going to move my body a little bit. I'm going to meditate, or, and I've used a lot of different apps and different programs and courses and different things that I've found really helpful. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that stuff. And so I've been really, really disciplined with that check in first thing in the morning before the world kind of comes in and tells me all those messages of, you're not enough and you're good. You got to go please these people and you got to go do this and that. But like, start here with, okay, who am I going to be today? And I even have like a little commitment statement of like who I am as a leader that's right next to my bed. And I look at it when I wake up in the morning. It reminds me like I'm a passionate, loving, vulnerable leader. And I'm committed to creating a certain kind of world. And that really helps me every day to plug back into that, because you could so easily just get hijacked into some other stuff real quick. So those are things that are really helpful. I think just regular reflection and journaling, those are things that I've always found time for. And I used to coach unhoused parents, and we talked about, like, when you're in the bathroom, or when you're riding the bus, or when you're at the appointment with your kid, like, take those little moments, make the most, instead of scrolling on your phone or whatever. Take a moment, take a breath, and so those are little practices that I've always had. And then I've always been really committed to being in community in some way.
Mm.
And I think that's what's so powerful about what you've created here is we're not alone.
Yeah.
And we should not be trying to do that alone. That's not what we're wired for. And so I've always been a part of artistic communities or sort of supportive communities, whether that's just friends or other types of initiatives that I'm a part of. And that has made a huge difference. Seeking out people who care about these things and not wasting my time on people who don't, because that's where I found myself like partying too much or doing other things that people are using coping strategies that are super unproductive. And so committing to carving that different path, you know.
And I hear a lot of like discernment along the way. Like we talked
Mhm.
to our family leader program, family leadership program folks about those inflection moments of like, just like you
Yeah.
perceive, you see, observe, and then you decide or choose from there, and having
Mhm.
the discernment to say, no, thank you to that. And yes, please to that, to something different, and make that choice in the moment. Oftentimes parents are feeling like they are in survival mode. So, and it's not really, they don't feel that spaciousness of choice. And I think, especially going back to high demand years, whether that's toddler years or tween years, it kind of depends on the family and what's happening in the family system and the temperaments of everybody. How do we flip that switch? I mean, it sounds like setting the tone for the day,
Yeah.
and making sure that we have sort of a well-developed pathway or
Mhm.
muscle memory around checking in with yourself and reflecting is key. Is there anything else that has really helped you when you are sort of feeling, up against the wall, survival mode, you start to see yourself get triggered or kind of pulled into a less empowered space? Like, what would you suggest folks do to help themselves kind of come back to themselves?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's so interesting, and now that I have a 16-year-old and I'm kind of looking back at those years, when you're in it, it feels like it's going to last forever. Right. And you feel like, oh my gosh, like this is the hardest thing, like dealing with these little toddlers who are screaming, or, just you're trying to get out the door and all the chaos that happens and all the pressures just feel like you just are going to crumble. This is going to pass. And these years are going to pass quite quickly, actually. And so having the ability to take a breath, take a pause, and think about, what's going to matter most about today when I look back on this a few years from now. Like, is this sandwich that I'm having a fight over really the most important thing? Like, what ditch do I really want to die in? Is one of my mentors always said, like, is this the battleground that I really want to go down on? And I think
Yeah,
some
I
of
love
those things is really looking at, looking back 5 years from now or 10 years or even 2 weeks from now, is this really the thing that's going to matter the most? And
I've always liked that. I would ask myself, whatever age the kid is, but my favorite one is like, am I really picking a fight with a 4-year-old? And the other one is, if in the story of my life, would this even get a sentence?
right.
Yeah.
I
Like
love that.
zoom out moments are so helpful. Like the ditch,
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah, and like who am I worried about right now? Am I worried about what somebody else is going to think about me as a parent? What am I doing to the relationship that I have with my child right now, or my co-parent, or whoever's with me? And then being able to step back and move forward from that place rather than from I know I'm a people pleaser and I like to look good. And sometimes you just gotta you got to let it go. And for me, I think the way that I've been able to get to where I am now with, a 16-year-old kid who actually sits down and loves to talk to me and tells me so much about his personal life that my friends are like, your teenager tells you that. And I think it's because I always made the relationship the most important thing. And I know we use these cool little phrases like connect before you redirect, or different things like that, but I think the connection is the most important thing. And if that is off, start there. And don't worry about all the fluff of the mess or what they're wearing, or what, the spilt milk, or those kinds of things in the end don't matter.
Yeah, I used to say to myself, like, drop everything and drop in,
Yeah.
whether that's with myself or if it's with the kids. And then as I was learning about how to support their growth, I'd always think, well, I have sort of two jobs here. I have the job of like health and safety, and then I have like the learning and growing, right? So thinking about like, how does this contribute to their learning and growing? But then later I realized that my third job though was prioritize the relationship, because that's actually the foundation where the other things can happen, in the sense of health, well-being and safety, learning, growing, in the setting and the foundation of a really rock solid relationship opens it up to so much possibility, better listening, more cooperation, better choices, more disclosure of like what's actually going on. Like they're more vulnerable and open when they feel that connection. So yeah, I love that. Thank
Yeah.
you for helping with that. And I think there's this way that you and I have learned to pause. And
Mhm.
it's so tied to the practice you already mentioned.
Yeah.
Because taking the time to reflect and like journal, or just like check in with yourself in a moment where you're like waiting on the bus and the other times you mentioned, but then thinking about what if you're in the moment with a kid and it's already hot, like there's already a conflict,
Mhm.
emotions already running high, and saying like it can happen there too,
Mhm.
even in like a micro moment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that there have been times as my skill, developed, because I remember those moments when Kai was like really little, and we had to be at this before care program by 7:15 in the morning. And if we were late more than 3 times, then we lost our place. And I had to be at the school where I worked by 8 a.m. And like, we just couldn't screw it up. And we'd be having those toddler moments with like, oh, my socks are wedging, or my pants, or I ate this peanut butter, whatever it was. And I'm trying to get my act together. And we were screaming at each other and all those things. But as my skill developed, I remember kind of being like, let's stop for a second. Like, we're yelling at each other. I love you. This is not how we want to be. I don't want to leave it like this morning. Let's not worry about this. And just I remember him being little, being like, take a deep breath, mom. you know, and we just kind of got in the practice of like, whoa, let's slow down in the moment. And I think it can be, the more and more we're aware of ourselves and what's happening, we can also be like, whoa, I'm really sweating, or there's like this little engine going in my body right now. Woo, woo. If I'm feeling this way, imagine what this little body in front of me is experiencing, and how do I slow down in the moment? And a lot of that was like, let's take a break. I'm going to go in my room.
Right.
You go in your room, or I'm going to go step outside, or yeah, not because I'm mad at you. I love you. I'm going to get my act together, and I'm going to come back, and we're going to redo this. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's often what we're helping parents figure out, like how to step away in a way that's supportive of, what's needed
Yeah.
versus like a punishment or some of some
Right.
kind, right? And you just modeled
Yeah.
that so beautifully. I just wanted to point that out to the
Oh,
listen.
thank you. Yeah.
So I have to ask a question, and it was one of my favorite things to talk to you about, which is like, why leadership? Like, why kind of frame parenting and caregiving as stepping into or becoming a leader in the family, in the
Mhm.
family system, in the space that you're, amongst others and children? Why did that stick for both of us? That's what I would love to explore. I'd like to hear from you first, Rachelle.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because for me, leadership is very connected to another thing that's very important to me, which is being a creative and a creator in my life. I'm an artist, I'm an expressive arts practitioner, and there's something about knowing that I can be the author of my story. I can be the creator of my life, the director of the movie about me, that to me, that's the kind of leadership that I'm thinking about. So I think we live in a world that sometimes looks at leadership as rank, position, income, those kinds of things, influence in a much larger way. There's something really empowering and beautiful to me about leading my own life. And I'm feeling like you've mentioned so many times in the conversation today, that being at choice, being at choice in all these different ways in our life. And so leading is also to me about having a vision of what we want to create, and being like, hey, let's go there together. Let's make that happen rather than getting stuck in the limiting beliefs and circumstances that are around us. If we can, as leaders, say, hey, what if we could have a family where there was, like for me, what if, even though we're divorced and even though shit hit the fan when I was pregnant, we can still be loving and we can be compassionate and we can collaborate and we can create great opportunities for our son and we can forgive each other, and that's leadership to me, because it's not breaking down in the face of circumstances. It's having a bigger view of what's possible and taking a stand for it, even when you don't know if it's going to work out, but like doing the things that will get you there and being in the ways that will create that for yourself. And that, to me, that's so empowering for families, for parents, because we go into family with dreams of
Yeah.
what we want to experience in our life. And to me, leadership is about connecting the dots from those dreams to reality in our lived experience every day.
I think too, there's this way that you're not waiting or depending on external circumstances to match your vision before you take action and before you allow yourself to feel and be, especially be in the state of having had accomplished these things, right? So it's like, I want to have a peaceful household. Well, like you can start with being as peaceful as possible, especially doubling down when things are, you're feeling less peaceful, right? Like you said with the Buddhist parable, I think around, oh, I can do that when things are more peaceful. It's like, well, how about we create some peace here? What would that look like? Some ease, some connection, some flow, some creative, exploration, some curiosity. So rather than waiting for the external circumstances to kind of deliver or match or create the perfect conditions under which you can finally feel or be a certain way, it's like this inside out leadership that I hear you describing is so powerful. And I wanted to add on another concept, which is one that came from me from Montessori, which was, I have a Montessori background. I was certified in early childhood and elementary, and really started with like 3 to 5 year olds, the little ones. And my gosh, this was so powerful when I learned it, but the power of role modeling and like showing a kid what a regulated nervous system it looks like, being able to role model in the environment the behavior that you want your kids to aspire to, and what that required in terms of leadership was kind of tremendous, because I had to be not only aware, but I had to be skillful. And then I had to, on my tougher days, make choices that would, move me towards the direction of how I would love these children to develop and grow, towards. So taking that on a very serious level of commitment felt like the foundation of leadership for me, the first time in my life, really. Much more than like saying, I'll organize the science projects and, be the one to set the meeting time or whatever. Like, yeah, there's like tactical leadership, but this was a different kind, which is embodying the vision or the direction that we are heading in. And I think something that we can consider is that, and this helped me a lot, is that what we show the kids versus what we tell them can have 3, 10, sometimes 20 times the impact than just telling them to do something. So if I say, everybody needs to calm down, but I'm not calm, first of all, that's very contradictory. But even if I say, take some deep breaths, but I never take deep breaths, versus just taking those deep breaths in front of the kid. And that's just one example. I mean, there are like, you can think of thousands, but just as a place to start, leadership is so much more about choosing and embodying and allowing your example to speak for you and teach for you and influence and shape kids for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And that makes me think of that beautiful Maya Angelou quote that so many people, use in, at least in my field in education, about people always remember how you made them feel. And that experience of the nervous system, especially with young people whose nervous systems are still developing, it's essential for us to create an environment where their nervous system can co-regulate with us. That's how they learn and grow and feel safe. And so everything you just said is like on a neurobiology place is essential. And so how do we, that's why I have those practices of like building that healthy, resilient nervous system of my own, so that my kid or my students or whoever I'm with can kind of like borrow a little bit from me, and then we can get where we want to be without me trying to control or punish or yell or all those things that ultimately are going to work against where we're actually trying to be.
And to tie these two things together,
Yeah.
I do feel like we're modeling the behavior we seek from our kids. We're modeling the kind of nervous system, the kind of even adult or woman, right? Or, you know, parent or worker or whatever role you want to kind of fill in the blank with. We're modeling that to our children, like what we hope they'll grow into. Well, then we can also model what leadership looks like. Mm-hmm. And like how power and empowerment and choice and agency could look like when it's at its, you know, in its best iteration. And what an amazing opportunity. Now, sometimes this does feel a little like out of reach when parents are in the muck, in the weeds of like, we didn't sleep last night because the kid woke up 6 times. The kid won't eat this cookie because it's not the brand they like, or, you know, I can pull 1,000 examples. So I guess what I want to have some insight in now, you know, we could check out is, you know, if you could like narrow down like some of the most important things that you've learned through this parenting journey about yourself that you think would be helpful for folks to hear right now, like that we haven't already covered, like what else would you want parents to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that as a trauma-informed educator and therapist, I think about a lot is, you know, we have sort of like what's called a window of tolerance on any given day based on how much sleep we got and how well we ate and whether we had a fight with our partner, or, you know, all those different things. And we do our best every day, but our best looks different. You know, and like some days we're going to be able to do all the things and be floating around the home like everything's all wonderful. And some days are just going to be like, we barely made it through today. And that's okay. And there's a lot of learning, like you said, of how we respond to those things that I think is essential. Like doing it perfect and making it look perfect is not doing our kids a service in terms of their social, emotional development and how they show up as humans in the world or ourselves. So those are things that I think are really important, and just keeping your eye on the prize, you know, like what is the most important thing here, rather than getting caught up in the little power struggles and ways we try to control a situation. Let it be messy. It's okay if it's messy.
And I like what you said about it. Like it's not doing your kid a service to basically when I think of like presenting the perfect parent, like it's hiding the mess. It's actually robbing them of the opportunity to witness how to work through the mess and how to deal with maybe like conflicting ideas or goals or emotions, how to pick yourself up after a really difficult day, how to repair a mistake, like all these things that if we're not allowing them to be exposed, they don't get to learn from us and witness it. And then they also have a really high bar of standards that they have to reach that's literally impossible for them to meet right now.
Yeah.
And so when we can come, I say like we can come down to their level and then rise up a couple, like 1 or 2 or 3 steps so they can see like, oh, this is what it would look like if I were to grow a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, rather than like, I'm going to come down to your level, then I'm going to pop up here into the sky at this level that is unreachable to them. Yeah. And so one of the concepts I like to bring in here too, scaffolding, like coming down to what is their skill level right now? What is their capacity right now? And guess who can model that? Mm-hmm. We can model like actually honoring where we are today, whether if it's one of those low capacity, messy days, honoring that and saying, okay, it looks like we're only going to get the basics done today and maybe only half of the basics. Like we're going to wake up with dishes in the sink and, you know, spill still on the table and homework only half done when we thought we were going to get it all done today. We'll have to get up early and try again. Okay. Like embracing that, accepting that, and allowing for it.
Yeah, and I think when I look at just my example with my son, one of the things that I feel like my parents role modeled really well for me was coming back and repairing after there was something that went wrong, and saying sorry and being like, hey, this was what was happening for me, and this is why I acted in this ridiculous way towards you or whatever it was. And I see that happening so much now with him, where he'll come and be like, I'm sorry I barked at you, mom. Like, this is what was on my mind, or this is how I was feeling. And I think that's just such a tiny little example of us showing up vulnerably, or that, there's plenty of times he's caught me like crying in my bedroom because I was dealing with something difficult, and I'll just have him come lay down next to me and I'll be like, I'm going through some really hard things. And he gets scared, and then I'm like, I'm going to be okay. I just need to feel my feelings right now. And if you have feelings, it's okay too. And just like making space for all of that helps all of us be better humans to the realities and the grief and the loss and the frustrations of life. It's not about, making it all. Yeah.
Like fit into the perfect frame or something.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Let it
Yeah.
go.
Let it go. I love that.
Yeah.
So at this point, you do have a thriving teenager. You have this amazing relationship with him. You've managed to, maintain a copacetic co-parenting relationship where you're, making choices that benefit the kid and the
Yeah.
family structure. And I'm wondering, though, like knowing what you know now,
Yeah.
if you could go back to a time when you were having a real moment where things felt hard or impossible or stuck. And there are listeners right now who might be feeling exactly this way. So this is for their benefit as well. But I wonder if you could go back and like whisper something into your own ear, what would you say to yourself?
Yeah, there are a few things that I would want to say, and it's like, you're so much stronger than you know, and this is going to pass. It's not going to feel like this forever. Things are going to change. You're not alone, and it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to have needs, and it's okay to set boundaries. So I
Mm,
think for me, I always felt like I just have to take it. I have to take all these difficult things instead of being like, you know what, that doesn't work for me. And I need to pause, and I'll get back to you later. Just things like that. Like when I was in the middle of overwhelm, learning that it's okay to say, I don't know how to handle this right now, and I need space. So wherever you are, it's going to pass. You are very strong. You're not alone. And it's okay to ask for what you need and take the time to figure out what that is.
a lot of us as parents and good caregivers stop asking that question. Like, how am I? What do I need? What do I want?
Yeah.
What do I and what do I choose from the possibilities? And I love that you're getting right to the heart of it, Rachelle, and like that reassuring it's going to be okay. It's going to pass. Yeah. It's a foundation for even tuning into what we really need and want from there. So it's
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah.
And then there's so much more possible after that. I think that's what we've been watching our program clients, folks who are in the immersion at the leadership and legacy level, like step into their leadership. And we have this concept of leader shifting, which kind of like out of like sort of a more victim sort of space into a more accountability, empowered agency, filled space where we can create our lives and choose. And we've also been working with this idea of, like we talked about earlier, but maybe to drill it down into something people could try at home, is that when you feel like you are waiting for external circumstances, that you like have something in order to feel something or be something, like I'll be happy once my kid is in middle school and I know that we got through those tough years, or I'll feel at peace when my kids can do their routine on their own and I know that they're going to be independent and I'll finally have some peace and quiet in the mornings, or whatever it is that you're waiting to change out here, like whether it's your kids or other circumstances. We like to challenge that at Raising Our Resilience and in a family leadership program. We say, well, what would it look like if instead of waiting until these external things happened, or you have, you have something to feel a certain way or to be a certain way, we start with being and feeling. And I thought you might share just like a little insight of the be, do, have sort of flipping the order of things tool that we use in leadership, just to give people a taste of like how that works.
Yeah, and I think that you already shared some great examples as well of just like, if there's a certain kind of feeling that or experience you want to be having, look for the little windows where you can actually create that right now. And also looking, as a coach, we ask the miracle question, like where are these things already happening and how do you make that happen more? Kind of look at those exceptional cases where that cool thing is already happening, can be really, really empowering. And we want our children to be responsible, we get to do that. We get to start there. If we want a loving family with, a partner that asks forgiveness after making a grave mistake, guess what? We get to start there. And I think the other thing that is really an important shift that happens once we kind of get out of our sort of like victimy loop that we all have, that our survival brain gets us in. If we can kind of pause and get to a more wise place, we can ask ourselves, like, what's the gift and the opportunity in this circumstance right now that I could actually flip this and be like, this feels like a roadblock right now, but this actually creates an opportunity for something different to happen that could be really helpful, or a place where I could build this skill, or we could learn a different kind of knowledge that's maybe missing right now. And I think that's part of that, is how do we,
Because
flip
we're
the.
not ignoring or bypassing the fact
No.
that there are real roadblocks and challenges and realities that we need to address. But I think it's the state of being, like our nervous system can run as if we've already gotten to the other side of it
Mm.
while we're moving through those challenges. And it can actually give us the kind of like this feeling of like the superpower of almost, I would say, like faith or confidence, or like you can't mess with me kind of energy. Like it's just like I will be this way. I will be. So like, for example, I know somebody who came across this concept and wrote a little bit about it, and has been sharing this idea that, like, don't wait until retirement to feel secure, or don't wait until retirement to feel like you can have fun or you can explore, right? So the identity might be like, I am a fun, secure person who has the freedom to explore.
Mhm.
Love what you're saying, Coach Rachelle, because before retirement, you can find lots of opportunities, even if they're smaller than full-blown retirement, but like an hour on the weekend or
Yeah.
like a getaway camping trip or whatever it might be, whatever that looks like for you, even just the state of mind of, hey, even in the middle of still having all these responsibilities of work and home and, children, etc., I get to be a person who has fun,
Yeah.
who feels secure in life, right? And in the love that I'm experiencing in my life, in the relationships I'm fostering, in the community, like you mentioned, and I'm free to explore and discover. And it may not be 3 years straight of no work in Hawaii, but right,
Who's
but
gonna get
I don't know. That's
that?
why I threw out a pretty
Unrealistic. You're
extreme
right. Right.
example. But like there is sometimes this idea that like we need to wait. Like
Yeah.
when I have this, then I can finally be this. Be the person that I want to be, or feel and experience my life the way I want to experience it. So bringing this back to parenting, I would ask folks, how do you want it to feel? Like, how do you want to experience and show up to parenting? And getting in touch with that is something that we do over and over again in our program. We work with these beautiful, big-hearted parents, and we all need to build that muscle or that habit of tuning into like, what do we actually want to create and how do we want to be and step into that space? And like Coach Rachelle just said, the practical thing is find spaces where that's already happening. And I would add, as I'm sure you were about to, Rachelle, like expand upon them a little bit.
Mhm.
Just a little bit, right? Like, how can okay, so I feel secure and I feel like I have fun and I can have a sense of discovery and exploration when I am on the dance floor. It's mine, by the way.
Yeah.
Where can I find more opportunities, even in my kitchen while I'm doing my dishes, or,
My
having a
favorite
nightly
one.
dance party with the kids. Like wherever you can find find it, expand on it where those places you find it. And Coach Rachelle, any other thought on this as we kind of wrap up?
Well, I think you can just, our brain is so malleable. And so we can train ourselves to look for the positive things. It's just like when you're looking at buying a new car, right? And you're like looking at that particular Subaru or whatever. Now on the road, wherever you look, you see it, right? Because you're like, oh my gosh, suddenly they're all over the place. And it's the same. We can train our brain to look for those positive things that reflect the experience we really want to be having, whether that's the growth in our child or our partner or something cool evolving in our family or even in ourselves. The more we look for those positive things, the more we're going to see them, and the more we're going to like step in and acknowledge those opportunities and like you said, expand upon them. And it's just in little mini bites. We're not talking about these like massive, ridiculous, bypassing kind of things. It's just little noticings, make a
And
big.
when you're tempted to do those massive bypassing things, see if you can scale it down to smaller things first before you take some, like I always say, like no sudden moves the first 2 years of parenting. Like when you have that like infant to toddler, no sudden moves, right? But like little steps.
Yeah.
See where that takes you first. Yeah.
Exactly.
I love it, Coach Rachelle. And we're here for it. We're here for this work. We're here for leaders. We're here for leadership development in all spaces. And I encourage you to, stay in touch with Coach Rachelle, whether that's through, having her as a coach in our world and the Raising Our Resilience, second, third year, fourth year work, et cetera. Or, reaching out to her directly. You can find more information about Coach Rachelle at our website. It's her name, RachelleArcher.com. It highlights her organizational work too. If you're curious about that, you can also find out more about it on her LinkedIn. And as an ICF, certified coach, snaps up Coach Rachelle. It's such an important certification you got. She's also coaching individuals and mostly is, chatting with people through her IG account there. So you can go to @artful_leadership to find out more about that, as well as her organizational coaching. And she has a podcast and you can find it on all platforms. It's called The Artful Leader, and it's full of powerful examples of especially creatives stepping into their leadership and using their creativity for good in the world. And, Coach Rachelle, I know you really enjoy people finding your podcast and being inspired by all these amazing people that you've been able to interview over the years. So hope that folks can check that out as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful conversation. And great work that we're up to. I'm proud of us.
Same, and many more months and years to come of collaboration. And it's so fun to open a window into the kinds of conversations that Coach Rachelle and I have all the time. And we had a moment where like we need to record an episode so people get like this stuff is great, and we should have the chance to share it with others and hear their feedback too. So feel free to shoot us questions, comments. We love it. We love hearing from you. And may the leadership in you continue to, grow in everybody who's listening to this. We believe in you. As we wrap up, remember, there's no one-size-fits-all way to parent. Keep nurturing those strong family bonds and watch resilience bloom in your community. You've got this. And if you found this episode valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can also hop over to thecalmempoweredparent.com for current events and to grab your copy of the Calm Parent Strategy Guide. You can even learn how to bring our free and low-cost workshops to your school or community. Your support means the world to us and helps us empower more parents and children. Let's do this together.